for those. All right. Latifa, can you unmute? Sorry, when I muted, then everybody will. Okay. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. I think most of the group here knows us, but I'll just do a quick introduction again. I'm Rabi.
I'm Ayeshah.
I'm Latifa.
And Latifa's based in Dubai. So guys, we were having a conversation 2 weeks ago about toxic relationships. It was a very engaging conversation. And we thought there were so many questions coming towards the end that we thought we would continue as a part 2, because clearly there was a lot that people wanted to discuss. And as always, we like to keep this conversation more interactive. So, feel free to jump in, like I said, type in your comments and ask us questions. What I'll do is I'll quickly summarize for those of us who missed last week's, 2 weeks ago's conversation. So we discussed what is a toxic relationship. First of all, a toxic relationship is not limited to just a romantic relationship. A toxic relationship could be something that you have, unfortunately, with your parents. It could be a relationship with your kids. It could be with your coworkers. It could be with your neighbors, perhaps even yourself. You could be having a very toxic relationship with yourself and the thoughts that you're having. So what makes a relationship toxic? Any relationship that is where people are not supportive of each other, where there's lack of respect for each other, where they constantly are undermining each other, where there's a lot of competition, and there's lack of cohesiveness. I think that in itself becomes a definition of a toxic relationship. And the impact of a toxic relationship is such that when you are in that relationship, either both people or one of the people consistently feels drained, lack of energy, and defeated. And I would say that kind of starts to define out what a toxic relationship is. Ayeshah and Latifa, jump in. Latifa, what do you think? That's kind of what we discussed about, and we discussed the various types, but I wanted to just summarize kind of the definition of what we're calling a toxic relationship.
No, absolutely, Rabi. I think you summarized it very well, what we discussed. I think, the important take-home message to just reiterate, and I know Ayeshah will back me up on that, is a relationship that does not serve you on the path that you want to go on for yourself, and actually takes you away from being the best version of yourself. That is how you define a toxic relationship. Now, I was thinking when I was driving here today, I was thinking about, you will read in a textbook so many definitions of what makes a toxic relationship. I don't care about what it says in the textbook. What really is important is if it feels wrong to you, if it takes away from you, that is the toxic relationship. You can go and you can check the criteria and you can say, oh, well, this doesn't meet any of that, therefore it's not toxic. You actually miss the opportunity to stand up for yourself, to actually take some action to shift the relationship into a better gear for yourself if you get stuck up on that. So the most important thing is for you to know that if it creates dissonance in you, which is uneasiness, and it actually minimizes your experience of health and happiness, then it's toxic to you. I think that's the most important thing.
I agree. Also, I would also add to Rabi's list, when sometimes a lot of there's controlling behavior from others, I think that is also a sign. And also avoidance of conflict, or avoidance of talking about deep emotional stuff, or real stuff. There's a constant avoidance, because I guess, and again, like Latifa said, all these things put together start draining you, start draining a person, and that is a clear-cut sign of being in a toxic relationship with that particular person. That is imminent of a toxic.
And I think the biggest thing with a toxic relationship, Latifa, and help us kind of go deeper into this, is when there's lack of respect and lack of boundaries. Right? A lot of times what happens in a toxic relationship is that there's lack of boundaries. Now, one thing I do want to point out is, Latifa, like you said, when it feels uneasy, a lot of times, and I think to be honest with you, we can all be honest and self-reflective over here. At some point in our life, we've all been in some kind of a toxic relationship. It could be with a friend. It could be, it could be with anybody. And a lot of times we just don't know we are in a toxic relationship. Would you agree, Latifa? I mean, you probably see that a lot, right? Like,
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake is that we miss that awareness. And if you miss that awareness and you kind of become like a rat in a cage, you actually miss the opportunity to recalibrate, to actually change the dynamics because you're not even aware. So the most important thing, I think, it's an overused word, it's become so popular more than ever now, but bring mindfulness to every element of your life. If you can bring mindfulness to what it is that serves you, what doesn't serve you, how is this relationship working or not working, you will quickly start realizing whether something is toxic or not. And I think the one that is probably missed the most is your toxic relationship with yourself. That is the one that
absolutely, absolutely.
both serving you, or are they actually harming you? And what is it that you're doing about that? So I think, yeah, very important that it is missed a lot, but important to switch yourself on.
And Melissa has a good commentary here. Like Melissa's also agreeing. Like, we've all been in a lot of these toxic relationships, but she mentioned that you only see them later. It's only later, years later or months later, that you realize, wait a minute, that was a very toxic relationship.
But so can I add?
Yeah.
There's also an element of fear sometimes of what will happen if this relationship breaks.
Yeah.
I think that it could be with anybody, but there's always an element of fear. And I think that's also very giving, like it's proof that, why would there be fear around a relationship that is healthy? First of all. Yeah.
To add to that, I think it's very valid what you said, but to add to that, I think a lot of people are afraid to actually take a very candid look at their relationships. So it's not even before the step of fearfulness of what will happen if they know that something is wrong, but they're unwilling to acknowledge it. So they medicate themselves with a whole lot of things external to the relationship and pretend that there's nothing wrong. I was just sitting with a client now before the session. He's been married for 21 years. He gave me this long story. It took 40 minutes to script the whole scenario of his life. And when he finished, I asked him, "Are you still married?" And he said, "Yes." So I said, "You've not mentioned your wife once in this entire situation, as you have a parenting issue with your teenager. You have an issue with both your children, and you describe yourself as a single parent. Because the way I listen to you, this is how a single parent speaks." And then he looked at me and he had this sheepish look on his face. And I said, "Are you married?" He said, "Yes." "There's nothing wrong with my marriage." I said, "Okay." And I just quiet. And then when he described his marriage, he had this aha moment saying, "Actually, it's not a marriage, is it?" Because as he described the fact that his wife is absent, she doesn't parent, she doesn't cook, she doesn't support him. We're the greatest of friends. We have a lot of respect for each other. She's just not my partner. But it required for him to actually say it out loud, for him to acknowledge something that was very difficult for him to see. So even if you catch yourself not willing to look in the boxes, that's also a sign.
Yeah.
So if you have blinkers on in any of your relationships and you exist with those blinkers, that is also a sign that maybe something needs to be done.
So Sadaf wrote that, Rabi, when we were talking about the list of toxic people and the different relationships, that you left out toxic teachers, which we have a plenty of in Pakistan, but all over the world, I would say, so toxic teachers, that's a good point, Sadaf.
Yes, that definitely is a very good point, because especially, and I've seen that, like Ayeshah said, all over the world, but especially in Pakistan, a lot of teachers really berate students and they really humiliate students, or perhaps do favoritism, or there's so much bullying happening, and that in itself becomes very toxic. So actually toxicity is all around us. The idea is that how does one realize that, wait a minute, this situation is becoming toxic and I need to remove myself,
step back
from the situation. But one interesting thing that we touched upon last time, and I know it got everybody very engaged, Latifa, was when we started talking about when toxic relationships occur within families, within parents, right? And the thing is, how do you remove yourself? You can't. That's a parent-child relationship. But how do you even identify that, wait a minute, my relationship with my parent is actually toxic, because there's a lot of guilt and shame in even saying that, especially in certain cultures, to be honest. Would you agree, Latifa?
So I think you hit the nail on the head when you said guilt and shame. If you are in a relationship with your parents or your siblings, and your primary emotion that you feel in that relationship is guilt or shame, there is something wrong with that relationship. Because in your family, especially the parent-child relationship, should be unconditional positive regard. Okay, unconditional positive regard means there is nothing that you can do or say or experience that your parent will judge you for. And
Wow.
if you are not able to experience unconditional positive regard in your family relationship, and you are experiencing guilt and shame, then that is a seriously problematic relationship, because that is the one place in the world where you have a right to expect unconditional positive regard. So it is so important to recognize the emotion you operate from in your relationships, which will tell you whether they're toxic or not. And I think it's so important also to turn the lens on ourselves and ask ourselves, are we the author? So it's not just important to have a look at whether I am the recipient of it, but whether I am the creator of it. Because as a parent, we don't always realize how toxic we can be. In our good intentions, we're actually doing more harm than we're doing good. And I think in our cultures, we also are told to not speak out because it's disrespectful. But there is a way in which you can speak out without being disrespectful. And sometimes you need to simply steer your parent on the right path, or you need your child to actually steer you on the right path for that awareness to come.
But sometimes, Latifa, I would say that, and I show you're a mother of 3 boys as well. Like, at what point do you say, you know what, it's my teenage daughter or my teenage son, and they're going through their teenage years, and it's puberty hitting, and that's why my relationship with them, and I'm kind of struggling with them, or wait a minute, has this relationship become toxic? At what point do you realize that? Because come on, we've all been teenagers, we've all had tiffs with our parents, that was part of growing up, right? So at what point do you say, wait a minute, this relationship with my teenage daughter who's 14 years old now, you know what, this is actually becoming toxic, versus, you know what, we're resetting boundaries and we are resetting certain areas of respect. I mean, I guess that's a question to you, to parents. And Latifa, what do you suggest? I know you deal with a lot with teenagers as well.
So I think it's a very good question, because I see a lot of parents taking everything personally. Because your child you see as a representation of yourself, you tend to take everything that they do personally, and you tend to internalize a lot of their behavior. So again, when you start defining whether a relationship is toxic or not with your child, is whether you feel emotionally exhausted with every engagement with this child. Whenever you have an engagement with this child, you feel like you're in a war zone or a battlefield. Even if there are no words, even if there is no screaming and shouting, you feel depleted. That's not how a mother is supposed to be when they engage with their child. You're supposed to have, especially with teenagers, you're supposed to have these little frictions, you're supposed to have that, but your primary feeling should be of hope, love, and joy in that relationship. And if those emotions are not that, then there is something wrong in that relationship. Again, we just go back to basics. Your emotions become the barometer that will tell you whether something is toxic or not. So just listen to your emotions, listen to what's going on inside of you. I'm interested to hear from the parents here what they think.
Yeah,
guys,
please, you can write down your questions or just
anybody
ask away. Yeah.
If you work with teenagers, what has your experience then have been? And while we're waiting for people to write, so the gentleman that I was with earlier, he's got a problem with his 18-year-old, and he said that at the age of 16, it was like a light switch one day. He was her favorite person. He was the one for the first 5 years of her life who bathed her, fed her, changed her diapers. He was the mother and the father of this relationship. And at the age of 16, it's like a switch turned, and she refused to talk to him, look at him. She even stopped taking piano lessons because he played the piano. The switch just turned. And a therapist who she's seeing called the dad recently and said, because you screwed up in these areas, this is the reason she has these issues, which I was horrified at, because you never do that. But said to him is what I want to say to all the parents here. There is no parent on the planet who doesn't screw up parenting.
Exactly.
Okay? There is no leader on the planet who hasn't screwed up their leadership at some point. The important thing is to acknowledge and to reset and recalibrate. But side by side with that, there is an expiry date after which a child can stop blaming their past for who they choose to become. So please take note of that sentence. Your child does not get to blame you for every choice they make as an adult that they become. That is their choice. Because every single one of us has a past that set a stage. What we do on that stage depends on us. And as a parent, your narrative needs to shift towards ownership and accountability for your child, rather than you constantly feeling guilty and trying to make up for things that are not your fault.
I also feel sorry to interject, but I also feel I find a lot of parents being scared. You know, it's funny. I find a lot of parents. It's almost like the dynamic has changed from the time that we were growing up. We were basically shitless scared of our parents, or maybe I was. Pardon the language here, but I feel like that dynamic has changed, and I find more and more parents like almost paralyzed. They don't want to offend their kids. They don't want to cross the boundary with their kids. They don't want to reprimand their kids. What is up with that? Like maybe the pendulum has swung really on the other side, where we're trying to cater. And I feel like, look, my whole definition is that I'm not a parent, guys. So hence I can give parental advice, But my whole thing is, there's a reason why God chose you to be a parent. Okay, so if you're chosen to be a parent, there's a reason why that relationship is as such, and hence you need to again, as a parent, show respect to your kids. As a parent, give them space and have boundaries. But you are the parent. You have to guide them. You cannot be scared of your child's moods, or of your child not speaking to you or whatever. I don't know. But is that fear real, or am I just imagining things? There's a few things that people have written. Ayeshah?
Yeah, so Sadaf said, I agree 100% with Latifa. One has to define boundaries with the child and stop taking things they do personally.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely correct. And then Melissa, because all of this, which what we were discussing, because now we have access to now we have access to so much more information, and we are scared of hurting our kids. A big debate in my house between me and my husband. We wrap kids in cotton wool now. It's so true.
Yeah.
I think,
this is such a favorite topic of mine, because I think if you set baseline values, you create a very clear value system in your home, which are your guiding principles. And then your parenting is about your being, not your doing. And this is what I think most parents miss. It's about your beingness, which means it's about how you are in your own skin, your confidence, your comfort, and what you will tolerate and what you will not. It's not about doing. It's not about all the 50 things you do. It's about being grounded in who you are. I always tell parents, if you are sorted and you can be the best version of yourself, your children will actually be fine. But if you are trying to deal with your own issues through parenting your child, that's when the boundaries become slightly blurred. And then going back to children today standing up to their parents and having so much of a voice, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think the important thing is not fall into the trap of getting your child to make you feel guilty so that they can actually then justify what they choose to become. As a parent, there is a power balance, and you make sure that you don't give that away. It works the same way as leadership. You can be a democratic leader, but that somebody needs to steer the ship. And the research has shown us that the parents that are stricter and more clear as to what they will tolerate and will not tolerate actually rear more confident children.
Absolutely.
The parents, those parents that think that I'm going to just let my child do and I'm not going to offend them. Listen, when you were learning how to walk, your parents let you fall a couple of times so that you understood the value of standing on your own 2 feet. You had to fall in order to understand what it means like to stand up again. If you keep wrapping your children in cotton wool, you don't prepare them for anything that life is going to throw them. So you need to stand up. You need to be confident of your position and your worth. If you're confident of that, then your child is going to actually be the same, okay, but with respect to you.
So let's flip that situation, guys. So today we're all adults, I would hate to say middle-aged, but we all are kind of getting there. And now we have aging. I speak for myself. We all have aging parents, right? And at this point now, the relationship that we've had with our parents, if we are now more aware and we realize that the relationship that we're having with our parents is more toxic, but what do? Now you have aging parents. Now our parents are touching 70 years old. How much conversation can we sit down and have? Honestly, I can tell you, and I have this conversation a lot with clients, with friends. You cannot. How can you sit down and have a conversation with an 80-year-old dad and say, you know what, this is where you've wronged me? Again, that's where I feel like that guilt comes. But at the same time, you're an active caretaker for them. Or how do you deal with that? How do you realize that, what, it is a difficult situation? My parents are old. There's a lot of respect, but at the same time, I'm going to completely berate myself if I continue. Where do I make the changes? Latifa?
Because I had such a conversation with my dad this weekend.
Oh, really? And, very interesting.
Exactly, such a conversation with him this weekend. And one of the things I realized is you've got to let the past go, right? You've got to deal with the now. If you want to have a healthy life, you got to heal your wounds from the past. In other words, you've got to make peace with the fact that every single experience in your past was polishing you. It was simply polishing you to be this version that you have emerged as now. And you should be grateful for that. The second thing is, when you deal with an aged parent who is probably having a toxic relationship with you now or being problematic, because old age is exactly a second childhood. And trust me, I've realized this more and more, having lived it rather than studied it.
Sure.
It is a return to childhood. And one of the ways I found very useful to get a message across is to simply create the scenario as if I am the one who is actually the problem, not you. And I need help to solve this problem. So I am the one who struggles to communicate well. I am the one who struggles to give enough time. I am the one who needs your help to actually fix things in my life right now that are not working. So I don't do any blaming. I do a lot of owning. And through that, they get certain messages. So for example, I am really struggling with this friendship right now. I feel like pieces of me are being taken away. There's so much of demand put on me. And honestly, I don't have any bandwidth or reserves left. And I feel disrespected. And I feel like I'm not heard. And I feel like I don't have a voice. And your parents are not stupid. So through that, trying to fix this for you, they start slowly that a subconscious awareness will come. So there is a baseline. The baseline with communicating with a parent who's toxic is no one size fits all. Maintain your respectfulness at all times. Do not be unkind at any time, but speak your truth in a way that is palatable for your parent to digest. In other words, I am suffering. It is not your fault. It is mine. And I need your help to help me feel better. What can you suggest? Okay. That kind of narrative makes it easier for them to come and meet you halfway, because the next question is going to be, how am I contributing to this? Okay, what can I do about it? And maybe they won't say that. Maybe they'll say nothing. But trust me, it will be in their awareness, and subconsciously some recalibration will take place. Obviously, there are more complex cases, but this is a baseline to operate from.
I like that.
I think that's with the assumption that your parents are not Desi parents, Latifa. I think that was your parents are South African, and they stepped back and said, "I understand, Latifa." With a Desi parent, I don't think it would go down that well. That I can tell you. I know we're running short of time, but I have to tell you guys a quick anecdote that happened like recently to a friend, and so my friend is single, and her mother, who has always been a very ambitious lady herself, has always pushed my friend to be ambitious, and my friend is very successful, is in the banking, is a very up there in a leadership position in a bank and doing fantastic, but she's not married. So every now and then, while her mother is always like pushing her, supporting her, is so proud of her, every now and then the mom flips and says, you're not married. Why are you not married? And so, this episode happened over the weekend as well. The mother flipped out again and realized, oh my God, my daughter's 41 and she's not married. So she proceeded to either contact some matchmaker or somebody, but found this gentleman with there's no match with my friend. And not to say that the gentleman is a bad guy. I'm sure he's a very nice guy. But there's no intellectual, emotional, there's no match. Anyway, so she not only matches them, but proceeds to send her daughter's number to this gentleman in Pakistan, and her daughter's here in Singapore. So this guy sends her a message, and my friend is horrified. She shares the guy's note with me, and of course I'm horrified. And I tell her, I said, listen, you're right. This guy is totally not your match, and I think you need to tell your mom that this is, this is wrong. And I said, well, tell her, how could she? She didn't make a mistake. She raised you up this way, and so my friend took my advice and went to her mom and said, Mom, then did you make a mistake? And her mother responded, but all mistakes can be fixed. I can fix you today. I can see you be married to this guy. All mistakes can be fixed in my mind. So there you go. That's a desi parent for you, Latifa.
Suspiciously like your mom. Suspiciously scripted by mama.
That does sound. And every now and then I will tell you guys anecdotes of Mama Nawaz. I'm fearful because Sadaf is Mama Nawaz's niece who's here. So Sadaf, this stays between us. Nothing goes back to my mother. But guys, we are running out of time. So I just wanted to kind of open it up to everybody and say, look, the whole purpose of these conversations is we want to keep it quick. We want to just have a touch point. This is a place for all of us to kind of come in, convene, talk about whatever's on our mind. We choose topics that we think will be impacting most of us, and we'd like to have a discussion. If you guys have topics that you'd want us to discuss, please tell us, send us a message.
Please write it down
Write it down over here. And that's our point. That's our purpose, to kind of get together, give you a chance. This is your support group here, if you may. Guys, you want to add anything? If not, then we will see you in 2 weeks' time. Guys, also, does this time on Tuesdays work for you, or does Thursdays work better? What do you guys think?
Just put it in the chat, I guess.
Okay. Okay. I have a feeling that Thursday may have been a better time, but
we just want to test it out and see. So now we know. We'll go back to Thursday and see if that works better.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, guys, for your time. Thank you for joining us. Can I send the recording? Absolutely, guys. I'll share the recording. And I haven't shared the last recording, which I have as well. So I'll send you both the recordings.
Thursdays would be better.
Okay.
They say Summer saying Thursday and Jim is saying Tuesday. Okay.
Okay. And then I think somebody's asking if you can share the recording. Yeah, guys. Yeah. So we'll share the recordings, and please go ahead and share that with your friends.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. And I'll share the first one as well. All right.
Thank you very much.
Hey, maybe next time, guys. What I think I just thought of a topic. Latifa, you mentioned this last time. Let's talk about the 4 agreements. We've talked about toxic people, toxic relationships, and I think Latifa said let's do actually what the 4 agreements are that you make with yourself. And I think let's take a deeper dive into that next time.
Yeah, I think that can take itself into so many channels because it applies to so many areas of your life. So sure, we can do that.
Sounds good, guys. Take care. Have a lovely week, guys.
Thank you. Bye. You too. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Latifa, I'm going to end it and then dial back in. Okay?
Same link?
Yeah, same link.